why not prescribe hydroxychloroquine? Why not prescribe that to patients who seem, again, this is anecdotally, not scientifically, who seem to take it and get better? They're popping up all over on cable news, and there is a U.S. representative from the Detroit area who apparently came down with the coronavirus, was prescribed hydroxychloroquine, took hydroxychloroquine with other mitigating things like zinc and Z-Pak, and has come out of this on the other end, and she has beaten this disease. But why is it not universally embraced? For that, we turn to a guy I've had on this show several times. His name is Dr. Murray Cohen. For many, many years, he worked for the CDC, over 20 years. Now he's in private business, and now he's standing by to talk to us exactly why hydroxychloroquine is not just universally administered to anybody that has COVID-19, and when indeed we'll be at the other end of this curve. So let's welcome in Dr. Murray Cohen, standing by to talk. And Dr. Cohen, on this glorious Saturday, we welcome you to 700 WLW. Thank you for joining us.
Well, Ken, thank you for having me. I always enjoy speaking with you, and I appreciate the opportunity to get the straight facts to your listeners.
Good. We've heard a lot about this drug, hydroxychloroquine, and we know it's been used to treat lupus. We know it's been used to treat malaria, various other maladies. Rheumatologists will prescribe that on a regular basis. It's a common drug. It's been vetted for those particular diseases. But now we keep hearing in these White House briefings about the beauty of hydroxychloroquine when it hasn't, to my knowledge, been vetted yet in this country for treatment of COVID-19. Yet there's a great clamoring of why not, if someone is on death's doorstep, to use it. Where do you fall with all of this? How do you see this drug? Is it this panacea we keep hearing about?
Well, we don't know yet. We sure hope so. I think, at the risk of perhaps being too geeky, I like to start at the beginning so your listeners will know exactly what we're talking about.
Sure.
First, give a ray of hope. Mm-hmm. Dr. Anthony Fauci, who we see every day from the White House, his institute at NIH has already begun a clinical trial on the family of chloroquines, hydroxychloroquine and others. And those results should be available in as little as 3 to 4 weeks. So we're pretty close to being able to really answer that question to some extent. But let's step back a little bit and ask, how does this drug work? I mean, we've been using it for a long time, 80 years or so. It works as an anti-malarial because it actually has properties that the malaria parasite lives inside red blood cells, and it's able to get inside those cells and be toxic to the parasite and kill it. So it's an anti-parasite drug.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
It's been tested as antiviral, and that has worked in cell culture in Petri dishes, but to my knowledge has never been shown to work in patients. It's used to treat rheumatoid arthritis and lupus, which are autoimmune diseases, because it also has a very strong anti-inflammatory effect. And one of the problems, particularly in stage COVID-19, is you get this raging inflammatory response that becomes autoimmune, actually eats the lung tissue as well as the virus. So the notion that perhaps it could be used as an anti-inflammatory and arrest that serious end stage of COVID-19 makes some sense. But a lot of things in pharmacology make sense. And then you try to put them in the body, and it just doesn't work for a variety of reasons. So that's why we have to do this mini clinical trial. And I want to point out, too, that I know I've heard a lot of misunderstanding that, oh, my God, a clinical trial takes years and millions of dollars. In this case, it won't, because the drug is already approved. It's an approved drug. It's already been shown to be safe, under specific dosage circumstances. Mm-hmm. We already know what side effects to be looking for, et cetera, et cetera. So that part of the trial, which is the phase 1 of a clinical trial, has already been done. Mm-hmm. All we're looking for is what you said at the very beginning. If this is going to be effective on patients with COVID-19, exactly who is it going to be effective for? Do you give it to somebody at a very early stage so that they don't develop a severe disease? Do you give it to somebody, as I was talking about, end stage to prevent them from dying and maybe reverse the effects? That's what is being studied right now, and we should know fairly soon.
Well, Dr. Cohen, all of this is anecdotal evidence, but there is evidence that a U.S. representative in Michigan took the drug and was put back on the road to recovery. There is a noted doctor in France that has done a clinical trial with 100 patients, 92 of which have recovered. I think 5 are still not well, and a couple of more died. It seems to me you're right. You've got this drug vetted, and it can get on a fast track for the next 4 weeks. But in a clinical sense, right now, absence of a trial. I mean, if somebody is on death's doorstep or is really struggling with this, why not? Is there not a why not factor in medicine?
Oh, sure there is. And I have great faith in our practicing clinicians in this country. And I have great faith that none of them are going to prescribe this drug when it clearly is contraindicated for any reason. I think that the notion of a Hail Mary, I got nothing else to do, so let's try this, that certainly is a circumstance now. Hopefully, this drug will be effective before patients get to that stage. That's what we really want to happen. And it's not just this drug. There are lots of drugs. The whole host of antiviral drugs that have been developed to treat HIV and AIDS, for example, are in various stages of trial to see if it will work against this virus. There are new antivirals that were already kind of in the pipeline to be tested against coronaviruses, going back to when SARS and MERS arose in past years. So those drugs are now being fast-tracked for clinical trials as well. I'm very confident that it's not too long before we have some drugs to throw at this and we won't have to worry about a Hail Mary. And by that I mean probably this summer sometime.
Yeah, and it's going to rear its head again. There's no question about that. Dr. Murray Cohen is our guest as we chat here on 700 WLW. What do you make, at least in the last 48 hours, it seems to be, particularly in New York City, a disease that's beginning to run its course. We see the numbers flattening a little bit, and there's clamor, obviously, inside this country to get the economy open and working again. What do you make of what you've seen, and why did it seem like these models that projected deaths in the millions initially, if we didn't mitigate, why do you think they're as low as they are right now and seem to be coming down?
Because we did mitigate, and we mitigated effectively. I mean, as painful to the economy as the social distancing has been, it has been effective. We can congratulate ourselves for that. We can still be extremely angry, and I'm extremely angry at the Chinese for causing it in the first place.
Yeah.
But the social distancing has worked and is working. I'm a little concerned about looking at states reopening. Yes, it's great to see New York and places where the curve is flattening, but let's make sure we understand what flattening a curve means. It doesn't mean that you have less cases. It means that you're spreading them out over a longer period of time so you don't have a big surge overrunning your healthcare system and your hospitals all at once. It's just, it's an interesting concept that we're going to have X amount of propagation of disease based on what we know about the virus and how it spreads and how many people in the population are susceptible and that sort of thing. We're just making the virus work a little harder or take a little longer to get to everybody. That's what flattening the curve is. But we're still going to have disease, and it's going to stretch out till longer. We talked about it the last time I was on. The number one thing we have done wrong, in my opinion, and we're still doing it wrong, is not testing, and particularly not testing for antibodies. We're not testing to determine people in the population who are immune because they had a mild infection. To me, to safely and confidently reopen the economy, we really need to know certain people have already beat the virus and let them be the ones that come out first.
Yeah, we could tap into them for their antibodies and help people that are infected or use that as a vaccine. There's great research to be done on that. I'd love to see that fast-tracked as well.
Oh, it is being fast-tracked. They're actually drawing blood from people who have beat the disease And we know that there's antibodies in the blood, even though we can't tell what they are or which ones count or whatever. We know that they're there. Mm-hmm. And they're creating a medication to be transfused from that patient's serum. This is what we did early on in Ebola in West Africa, and it worked. It's a tried and true procedure. It goes back maybe 100 years.
Wow.
So we've got that one. And as we learn more specifically, trying to isolate the antibodies that are effective, we can use those to begin to develop, as you say, both vaccines and therapeutics. That's a little bit further down the road.
Yeah.
I'm pretty hopeful that we'll have a vaccine perhaps by year's end. That's ahead of the time that Tony Fauci says. But we've already had some trials initiated that are showing promise. So certainly we'll have it in a year, but I'm hoping that we'll have it, say, the middle of this next flu season.
Well, that'd be fantastic if that indeed is the case. Dr. Murray Cohen, it's always great chatting with you. Thank you so much for your time. Happy holiday season to you, to all our friends in the Christian and Judeo faiths, and thank you so much for taking time from your holiday weekend to join us. We appreciate it.
Ken, thank you so much. I'm always glad to talk with you. Have a blessed Easter.
Sorry, doctor. Still under lockdown? Still ready to get going when and if. But when is not now, and if could be any time. So glad you're with us. Coming up on 1223 News Radio 700 WLW.